By the end of this tutorial, you'll have all the information that you need to be able to make your pass as invisible as a cover pass. I'm going to teach you how to have maximum control and to be able to do it at any speed very comfortably. And the best part is that it will be completely invisible.
My name is Josh, and I'm going to be teaching the classic pass today. This will be our first tutorial. And what's going to be a little bit different about this channel is we're going to be teaching all the slides from a POV perspective. So I will be going over the slides a little bit from the other person's perspective, just so you can get an idea what it looks like. But I think it's going to be very helpful for people who are learning, especially newer magicians, to kind of see the slides, what they look like from their own perspective. It's always really difficult to try to reverse engineer like what I've seen. You know, you're trying to figure out where exactly your fingers are going and all this stuff, and I think it would be much more helpful just to see what it would look like if the cards were actually in your own hands. Hopefully that will be helpful for you guys. A lot of people are doing it incorrectly, and they've been actually given the complete wrong philosophy on it. I'm really aiming to teach this move with proper technique and some different techniques you might not have seen, and also talk about the philosophy, the psychology, and everything behind the pass, how we can actually use misdirection to make it even better. I think it would be in everyone's best interest to at least get their pass good enough so that if it was being burned, that they won't see anything. We definitely don't want them to be seeing any kind of a cut or any kind of a spastic motion, anything like that that would, raise suspicion. But we're going to talk about how to do the pass using misdirection so that we don't have to really worry about that as much. So by the end of this tutorial, you should be able to do the pass completely invisibly, so that if someone was watching your hands, they still wouldn't really be able to tell what was going on. It would just look like you were kind of fidgeting with the deck, if anything, or maybe just squaring the deck. So we actually are going to teach how to do the pass in the squaring action, so they kind of blend together. I think this is one of the best ways to do the pass because it has a great beat for misdirection with it as well. So when the deck is kind of messy like this, we actually have full justification to go bring our hands to the deck and touch it and square it up. I see a lot of people doing the pass. A lot of times they will set the packets down on top of each other, square already, and then you'll see this kind of fake squaring in action, and then they'll do the pass. And that doesn't really make sense because the deck's already square. So we're going to learn how to square the deck and pass at the same time. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of how this should look from the other person's perspective before we wrap around the camera and teach it from POV. And there's actually a lot of different steps involved with even just getting set up for the pass. So the get ready is very important because it's going to set you up for the entire move, right? You don't have to actually square up the deck and fidget around as much, as I see other people doing it. It's really not necessary. You can actually kind of curl your fingers over and you can just grab the bottom packet while leaving the top packet kind of like a mess, right? So just for an example, what it could look like, let's have a card selected from the middle, have it placed back. Then what we'll do is we'll just leave the cards a little bit messy on the deck. Now, we can take this opportunity to ask a question and make eye contact, or we can kind of talk about the effect. I do recommend having some kind of an action to justify bringing your hands to the deck. That's why we leave it a little bit messy. It's also helpful to maybe have a table or, somebody that you can kind of turn to and talk to as you do it as well, because it's good to be able to turn your body sometimes. Say a card selected, talk a little bit about the effect. Say that there's a table in front of me, or to my left or to my right. I can actually point to the table and say, here, come over to the table. I want to actually show you something. And then you can do the pass as you go place the card in someone's hand or in the table. So those are just some misdirection ideas that you can use with the pass. You will find that if you can make eye contact with your audience, that their eyes are going to follow where your eyes go. So for example, if I were to kind of stare down at my hands like this, everybody's eyes are going to be looking at the deck because I'm looking at the deck. So they're like, why is he looking at the deck? Something's going on there. So it's much better to kind of leave your eyes up and then do the pass while making eye contact. Like I said, you can also be talking and kind of turning your body at the same time. So let's get into the actual mechanics of this, and we're going to talk about the techniques, and then we can go a little bit deeper into some of the different misdirection ideas and stuff that you can use.
All right, guys, so before we get into the POV perspective, let's talk a little bit about how this should look from the front. There's actually a few ways you can do this, but I like to just kind of leave the cards a little bit messy, and then I go to square, and that's when the pass will happen. Another way that this could be done is you actually square the cards up first, and in this kind of fake squaring action is when the pass will take place, right? So you can use your thumb to actually get it a little bit more square before you go ahead and go into the pass. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you might want to do it this way, because it is a little bit more difficult to get into position from this unsquared deck to actually go ahead and execute the pass. So I'm going to show both ways of doing this because I think it's important to learn both ways, because it is gives you a little bit more security to kind of do this fake square first, and then you get the cards a little bit more square so that it's less of a hassle, things won't get hung up. But once you practice more, you will be able to actually do the pass from a kind of messy top packet. It is actually possible to curl your fingers kind of around so that you're only going to be touching the bottom packet. Top packet will be messy still, and you can actually pass the cards like that. You'll see just like you can actually do that. And I think that actually kind of aids in the illusion as well, because you see this kind of a mess, and then it's still a mess, and now I'm actually squaring, and it's a real square, right? So this movement is actually justified. So that's when you kind of do the passes, right when they're still messy. That is going to take a lot of practice to get it down, but I think it's definitely very valuable to learn how to do that. You might notice how I'm actually kind of slightly turning my body as I do the pass. You notice I'm starting from this kind of an angle because it gets better cover for the initial cut. And then I slightly turn my body as I go into it because that actually helps the angles for the next part. So it's just a very, very subtle little turn that you can do. But keep that in mind when you are practicing your pass. Don't sit still completely. It is totally allowed, and actually, in my opinion, is definitely advantageous to kind of start from this angle and then turn as you do it a little bit. And to justify that movement, you can hand the deck out, or you can place the deck on the table as you do it. And then that motion actually makes sense, because say, for instance, there's somebody just a little like standing over here. I can be like, okay, look, your card's in the middle. I don't have control of it. Can you actually, I want you to hold on to the deck. You see how that works? So that's a really good way to kind of cover the pass. So we're going to be talking a lot about how to naturally increase the speed of the pass without forcing the cards. We don't want to jerk or have any kind of quick motion, especially the jerkiness, anything like that. So we're going to talk about how you can actually do the pass with not forcing anything. You can basically do the pass with barely using your bottom hand. You can just really just let the packets fall naturally, kind of like that. I'm not forcing anything when I do that. I'm just letting them fall naturally. So there's no forcing necessary. And speed is not necessary either, but once you learn how to kind of naturally let them fall, speed will come naturally with it. So that will allow you to kind of do more color changey type things where, you know, it's more visual. So speed is obviously really nice if you're going to do a color change or vanish or anything like that, because you want it to be this visual type thing. So you kind of want them to see the deck change, right? So we will definitely talk about getting the speed up for things like color change and stuff like that. I like doing kind of like a jiggle pass for my color change. And it does require a little bit more kind of forceful action, but not really. You can still kind of just let the packets fall naturally, because even with the jiggle pass, you can actually have great cover by using these techniques that I'm doing here. You don't have to you don't have to rely on speed, basically. You can rely on angles. You can rely on angles and technique, and you can give the perception of speed, because they will see the card instantly go to the top, even though you're not like, you know, super fast cutting or anything like that. What will basically happen is that as soon as your hand starts jiggling, that's when they're going to notice that the card has changed. And I actually just did a fairly slow cut there, but it looked instantaneous. So we're definitely going to talk about how to make the pass seem instantaneous when it's not. Because in reality, I was really just dropping the packet about that fast when I did that jiggle pass. Speed is futile when it comes to the pass, or really any shift for that matter. Speed is not necessary, and that's something that a lot of people get wrong. They think that they have to do it quickly so that they can get away with it really quick and they won't see the cut because it was too fast. That is completely the opposite way that you want to think about the pass. It's extremely important that you learn the proper technique and finesse with it. You can really just let it feel very natural. It doesn't have to be this really forced action or anything like that. So the cut can really just take place in this very natural and slow motion. Like you can see, I'm doing it a little bit slower here intentionally, so you can really see that you don't need speed to really cover the pass. It's very unnecessary. And I'm not sure why it's gotten so popular in the last however many years. I'm not sure why people think that you have to be, doing this breakneck speed pass. It's completely wrong. So let's turn around the camera here and get into the POV's perspective. We'll talk about what's actually going on here with this pass.
All right, so let's get into the actual mechanics and different techniques of using these passes here. So the two versions are something like this. We're going to have one version where we actually square up the deck first, and as we're squaring, we actually do the pass and finish it with a legit squaring action. And then once you get more comfortable with the move, I'm going to show you how to actually do this move with a kind of messy deck. And I think that's just a really nice illusion that you're squaring up the cards. So let's first just focus on doing it from a squared deck, because that will be what most people are going to be most comfortable with. So as I briefly mentioned earlier, the get ready for the pass is extremely important. So I'm going to show you how to do it from a spread, because I believe that this is probably the best application for the pass is from a spread. However, you can catch a break from a dribble, just like so, and that looks really great too. It is a little bit more difficult to get in position from here because you're kind of set up like this after you catch the break, where you want to get into this kind of a break. So I do definitely prefer doing it from a spread. Or you could also just have two packets like this. Say they pick this card from a dribble, you can set it down in this position to begin with. So that also works pretty well. So whatever you're comfortable with. I know some people like to just have a riffle down, and that's totally fine. They can show the card, and then you're just going to want to place the pack on in this kind of a break. It's like an Erdnase break, so you should have a V shape like this. Left-hand side should be squared up, and then you have this big break here. Now it's really important to make sure that you have fingers covering that break in the front, otherwise you're going to give away the method. So you can do this with a 3-finger grip like this. That works really well. Or you can do it with 4-finger grip, so they're all at the front. Depending on what style pass I'm doing, I'll use either way. So sometimes I will actually have a grip like this, and I'll actually do the pass in this kind of a position. Sometimes I'll do it in this position. Other times I'll do it in this position. And other times I'll do it in this position. It's whatever you're really comfortable with, I would say. Everyone's hands are different sizes and different shapes, so it's what's comfortable for you. Either way is fine. I will, however, say that these different grips do have different pluses and minuses to them, depending on what type of pass that you want to do. So just keep that in mind. There's other ones as well. Sometimes I will actually do a 2 fingers at the front like this. That will take some time to get comfortable doing the pass with only 2 fingers. You can also use 2 fingers at the front with this kind of a grip as well, and you just let your pinky overhang. The problem with this is obviously you don't have any cover for the gap. So you kind of need to aim your hand down more towards the ground when you do this one. And the reason why sometimes I like to do it with 2 fingers is because you have a lot more room here. You'll notice that when you start learning the pass that the top packet is getting caught up on these front fingers a lot. And you might feel like it's impossible to get the pack around because it just doesn't feel like there's enough room for it. So one way you can give yourself more room is just by using less fingers. Okay, so if you can get to the point where you can just use 2 fingers but kind of keep your other fingers in front as cover, that's what I do a lot of times. This will allow you to very, very easily pass the packets by each other without them getting hung up on each other. But it's going to take a lot of time to train your finger independence so that you can do this. This is not a natural way to hold something. It would feel more natural for your fingers to be like this. But you have to learn to force yourself to keep your fingers kind of in this position while only really holding the pack with these 2 fingers. But don't worry about that for now. In general, it's fine to use 3 fingers or even 4 fingers, but we're going to focus on using 3 fingers for the most part for this tutorial. Hopefully all that makes sense about the different types of grips and finger positions, but let's talk about actually getting the break. So I prefer to do the break from a spread because it's the most efficient way to get the break, and it also, I think, it looks the best as well. This is a very nice image. It looks like I have no control. I can even let my fingers off, and I still maintain that break because this back corner here is actually right above their selection. So when I'm ready to get the break, all I need to do is square the deck and then push up with my ring finger at the same time. And now I will have a nice wide break. So we're going to go over how to do the pass from a squared deck first, and then I'll teach how to do it with a messy deck. So again, we're going to try to work on doing this from the spread. Now it's really important how you place the spread onto the pack. You need to get these fingers out of the way, because if they're sticking up over the edge, what will happen is that you'll have this massive break at the front. That is very, very obvious. There are ways around it. You can actually close up the spread with it in front of the pack like this and have your hand aimed down a little bit, and then you'll be able to get away with that break. But at some point, even if you're here and they can't see it because you aim down, you are going to have to square this up to do the pass. And when you square it up, it is very likely that this gap will be seen. But if you do enough practice, you can keep in cover in front with your fingers. So when we close the spread, we're going to get our fingers below the front edge here so that we can place the packets on flush. It should come down flush like this so that there's no break. All we need is this tiny little corner here to catch our break when we're ready. When you're ready, all you have to do is get your pinky in there, and then as you're squaring the front, you push up with your ring finger like this, and then you'll have the break. Also, a really important subtlety is when you push up like this to get the break, you want to keep the top packet at the same angle. So you don't want them to see this. So what you'll do actually is you're more so lowering the bottom packet. So you're kind of pushing down and away instead of pushing this up. So instead of pushing up like this, you're actually levering your hands downwards like this. If you can see that. So this is what's happening. Not this, but this. That'll just take a little practice, but you'll get it down. So again, remember, you're going to close the spread flush. And when you close up the spread, make sure to kind of slightly angle it so that the top left corner is going to be sticking off the corner here so that you get the back right corner sticking out a little corner as well. That's all you need to do. So it's really simple, but it does take a little bit of practice to get used to this because it feels awkward to kind of get your fingers out of the way. So there's two ways that I generally do it. You can just either open your fingers up like this. So like imagine just holding the deck like this. So you just kind of extend your fingers and that will get them away from the edge. Or you can kind of use your thumb to kind of hold the pack in place while you move your fingers down like this. So it would go from here down to here instead of opening your hand up because obviously the cards might fly around. But either way works. Now, as you close it up, you're going to make sure that your index finger goes to the right hand's corner side like this. So it should be on the right side at the front. And I'll get into why we're going to do this in a little bit. But it is really important as far as efficiency goes and economy of movement, is your finger's going to have to go here when you start the pass anyway. So you don't want them to see you moving this finger around before you go into the pass because it's just extra movement that is not needed. So remember, just keep your fingers a little bit down so that these cards can go on flush, and then you're here. So that's step one. And then just remember, you can, as you're squaring, you just kind of push up and down. So you're really actually just kind of levering down instead of pushing up. Or if you're not used to how that feels, you can also tilt your hand as you push up. So it kind of looks like this. As you're pushing up, you're also angling your hand at the same time, right? So that this doesn't appear to move at all. So practice that until it becomes very easy. And remember, it's okay to have it a little bit messy. As long as you have this little card sticking back here over the edge, you're all good to go. And I actually do like having it just a little bit messy because it aids in the illusion of that you're squaring the deck, even though they shouldn't be looking at your hands anyway. But again, we want to get to the point where if they were, they're not going to understand what's going on. They'll see it as just a natural action like you're squaring the deck. So it won't be suspicious. Now from here, there is actually somewhat of a procedure to squaring this. I like to come up from the front left corner and kind of swipe across like this while pushing with my thumb at the back. So it's kind of like swiping across and grip and squeezing. So it's just swiping across and squeezing at the same time. So once you get it squared up horizontally, you kind of just do this little kind of a motion like that, and it will be square. And then at the same time, you're kind of pushing in with these fingers like this while you're getting that readies break. Once that's done, then you're going to use your thumb to get it even more squared up on the side. So it'll look nice and tidy, and then they won't be able to see any kind of a break or anything like that. You might be able to see a slight discrepancy from this view and angle, but from their perspective, it will just look like normal. And they don't even know what to look for here anyway, so it's not a concern. And also your hand's gonna go onto the side like this anyway, so they won't even notice that. But you do wanna make sure that you get this nice V-shaped break like this. So once you have it all squared up, this is when you're ready to do the pass. Now, as you're squaring, this is important because your hand will get into the position and grip that you need as you square. So we're gonna hide the get ready in the squaring motion here. Once you get this nice V break, you're going to get your fingers on the bottom into position for the pass as you are squaring corner. So if you look what happens here, as I'm squaring back, I'm sliding my pinky finger deep into the deck like so. And then these fingers are coming to the top. And you see how they're angled back towards my body? This is maybe a little deeper than usual, but generally you want to go up to the knuckle, about up to the knuckle. You do want a very deep grip. I see a lot of folks getting their pinky only slightly in, and it's going to hurt their pass. You want to get as deep of a grip as possible because then you actually have much more leverage on the pack. And also, you don't have to move it as far to get it to pass underneath. Now, if I only had like a little bit in here like this, let's say, now it's much more flimsier and it has to go much further out to get underneath. Whereas if you have higher amount of leverage on it, you can literally just cover it much easier. Like, I'll try to show you what I mean. So if I do a small break like this, I had to come all the way out and you might even lose the cards. You're gonna have to swing it out much further to get it underneath. Now watch this. If I do a nice deep one like this, I can actually have much more leverage and control of it, and then I can sneak it in there by kind of pivoting out the pack at the same time. This is also why it's important to get your index finger on the corner like this, because now it's already in position where it needs to be when the pass starts. So I'm going to square, leverage up, catch the break. Now, as I go back here to square, I'm getting my hands in the final position. So I'm now in the final position and I can actually start the pass now. So what happens is my thumb comes back to square like this, comes forward, I tilt my hand up, and then it starts. And then I can end it by doing a real squaring of the deck. So the angles are important here. You tilt your hand down as you start, then the hand tilts up as you go to the front. The pass will begin right here as you begin tilting your hand down again, and the pack will come forward at the same time. Boom, I'm in position. Hand moves forward, and I'm still pretending to square. I begin the cut here as the hand begins to tilt downwards. Now, the pass is basically complete. All I have to do is just get it squared up at the bottom, and then I can finish up. All right, so let's review really quick what we just talked about. We spread, we move our index finger to the right-hand corner, and we move our fingers down so they get out of the way. We're gonna close the spread flush onto the deck with a slight angle to it so that the bottom right corner will stick out. This card is directly above their selection. I'm gonna do this kind of smooth looking type of square like this. So you're just kind of rubbing the front edge like this and pushing with the thumb. Now you're going to kind of lever up the two packets so that they make a V. And now we're going to do the simulated squaring action. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to move my pinky deep into the the break. So it starts like this. Now I'm deep into the break at this point. Hand comes forward and points up. And as soon as the deck is pointing at their eye level is when you begin the cut. And then the hand starts to tilt down towards the ground, and you also move it forwards and then finish up by doing the squaring action. So that is basically how it looks. Okay, so now let's talk about the cut itself. So we now know how to get the get ready and do the simulated square. And we're in this position now, like this, or like this, depending on how you want to grip it. How we're actually going to do the cuts is really, really nifty. So to start the cut, you're not going to use your left hand to really start the cut. That's the incorrect technique. Instead, what you're going to do is start the cut by releasing pressure from your right hand fingers. So let me give you an example of how that looks. Move your thumb away from the top packet. And at the same time, you're going to move your front fingers away from the front packet. This is what happens. The fingers go like this. This is how you release the packet. Has nothing to do with the left hand at all. It's all about releasing the top packet by releasing the pressure from your right hand like this, and they will naturally fall. Now it will take some practice again, because you need to kind of start developing finger independence to do this, because you don't want any movement really in these other fingers that you're not using. But it's very subtle how this happens, and since your hands are moving a little bit when you do it, they won't even notice that you do this. Okay, so it'll be blended in kind of with this kind of squaring type thing, right? But that's basically what's happening. You'll get the hang of it once you try it out. But yeah, basically you're just kind of moving your fingers away from the top packet like this. So the front fingers and the thumb are moving away, out of the way like this. You know, it kind of reminds you of like one of those machines that has the claw that you can never win any prizes with. You know, you kind of imagine your hand like a claw. So that's important as well for when you grab the packets initially, when you square up. Pick them up in this claw, want to grip it like this so that it's stable. But then when you're ready, you just release the pressure and the packets will fall. And since you have such a deep grip, this is basically just cradling the top packet on the way down. So that's all that's happening. It's extremely easy to do the cut when you learn these principles. This is also a reason why I don't really like using my pinky to grip the front, because if you get this out of the way, it makes it even easier to just kind of open your fingers and let the packets fall. So that is basically how you start the cut. It's happening from the right hand, not the left hand. And I think most people are taught this incorrectly. They are told that they should be using this tight grip and using the left hand to force it through, but that's not how the pass needs to be done. It's actually very inefficient, and it will make a lot more sound. Your fingers will be a lot more constrained. It's just not a very good way to do it. So once you get this down by just releasing the pressure, now we can actually start adding in a little bit more with the left hand. And what I mean by that is you're cradling it, and you're letting it fall naturally, but what you want to do is actually let it pivot out like this. I see far too many people letting the packets cut like this. This is very inefficient. The packets really shouldn't be cutting like this. That's an extremely inefficient motion. You know, they shouldn't come straight off like this. The reason why you don't want to do it that way is because you're going to have a lot less cover, and it's going to be a much larger motion. It just takes a lot more motion and a lot wider movement to get these parallel packets by each other. It's actually much more simple to get them around each other if you were going to pivot it out like this. Now you'll notice that the back edge can get under there much easier. So instead of going all the way out like this and then under, you're actually going to pivot it out kind of like this. And you'll see that the back edge can now swivel underneath much quicker. When you use this kind of pivoting motion like this, you'll be able to start swiveling it underneath kind of like that. Now that's not exactly what's going on, but it's a little bit difficult to show it from this angle. But what's happening is it's pivoting out like this, right? And then once it gets here, it's easy to just swivel it underneath. You'll notice that once you start letting the packets fall naturally, this will happen automatically. It's kind of a byproduct of not forcing the packets. If you just let them fall naturally, you'll see they naturally want to pivot anyway. So there's really nothing that you even need to do to make that happen. All you have to do to make it happen is just let it happen naturally, see? I'm not forcing anything, I'm just letting them fall, releasing the pressure, and they automatically kind of want to pivot out. You see, I'm barely even gripping the packets here. I'm just letting them fall naturally, and you'll see that they want to pivot like this. So once you're about here, then you can start kind of pulling up this side of the packet just slightly to make it clear a little bit quicker. Keep in mind that this is extremely subtle though. You don't want it to look like this, because that's way too much movement. I see way too many people doing passes like this, and you'll see like this pop-up of the top packet once the bottom packet is cleared. We really don't want this kind of a motion, because this is giving away that something is happening, right? It's just a very, very small amount of pulling up. Once you're here, it's just kind of like that. And you can kind of blend that in by moving the packet forward as you do it. So moving the packet forward actually accomplishes pretty much the same thing. So what we're actually doing here is we're going to just slightly push it up. But see how my fingers are moving when I do that? We really want to avoid that as much as possible. What we can do is just very slightly do that, maybe about that much, and then we're going to move this hand forward, and that will actually help them clear as well. So just a slight little bump up and forward, and it'll help them clear. This doesn't only just help them clear, this gives better cover from the front as well. When you practice your pass, I want you to actually pay attention to how that works. Once you're here, once you move this hand forward, it actually gives you amazing cover for when it's being transferred to the bottom. It will completely conceal that happening. So your hands are like tilted forward like this, and the packet's under here like this. Now you don't want to go too far forwards, otherwise they're going to see a flash at the back. So remember that both of these motions are very subtle. It's not this large motion, it's just a very subtle motion of popping up the top packet and moving it forward, just maybe like that much. So they shouldn't even be able to tell that you were even moving your hand at all. So we don't want to bring it out like this far or anything like that, but just a subtle amount. All right, so once you get them past, you can actually start swiveling it in your hand like this as well. So I've seen that kind of like this dead hand principle of passing, where the top hand stays completely still, and then the entire cut is done with the left hand. The problem with this is that you don't have any cover here when you're passing the packets. So if you move this packet forward a little bit, it actually gives you really nice cover, and it helps you clear the packets even easier. So this is probably the most important part of the pass when it comes to creating cover for the cut. It's not hard to cover the cut here, because you can do that by angling your hand up. You can also cover it by using speed, which again, I want to get everybody away from that because it's unnecessary. However, when people use this kind of dead hand principle, when the top hand doesn't move at all, and everything's being done with the left hand, there's not really an easy way to cover the packet transferring to the bottom. It's one of those things that flashes pretty bad actually, if you don't utilize a little bit extra cover from the front by moving your hand forwards. All right, so this is important. This will make your pass pretty much as invisible as a cover pass if you can get the timing correct. So basically you start the cut, right as your hand turns down, then it moves forwards. You kind of swivel it back in underneath and then square, and it all happens in this kind of a timing. So it starts, aims down, and then you finish it up by squaring. So just keep practicing that, and eventually you'll kind of get the motion down. Now again, you don't need to go that far forward, but play around with it and see. It depends on your angles. If someone's taller than you, they might be able to see the packets back here. So actually behind, they might be able to see it if they're taller than you. But if they're at like the same height as you, or maybe a little shorter, this is not really that big of a deal. They won't see it. So just keep that in mind. Play around with your angles a little bit. So basically, the pass should start looking something like this. Another really important point here is I'm not using my ring finger and pinky to pull up the deck here, right? Because that's a very large action. You can see a lot of movement in the hands when you do that. What's actually happening is that you're pivoting it off of your middle finger like this. See how much less movement is noticed when you do that. So you're kind of pushing down with your pointer finger and it's kind of pivoting off of the middle finger. If that makes sense. See? It's really the pointer finger pushing down and pivoting off of the middle finger. That way you don't have to move the other fingers as much. But again, it's really important to clear these packets very efficiently if you want to make the pass as invisible as possible. So a little bit of finger movement I think is fine, because you're going to blend it in with you squaring up the deck. And obviously your fingers move around when you square a deck. So it is possible, again, to really cover the entire pass. So if you utilize these techniques I'm talking about, you'll be able to really pretty much make your pass completely invisible. I know a lot of people claim that you can't make the pass invisible, all these things, but you really can. There will be some finger movement, but again, we're justifying all the finger movement in the squaring, right? So we're going here, we're squaring, the pass starts, and then it just looks like we're squaring to them. They never see this, and they never see this. The two parts of the cut are honestly completely covered. So here I'm aiming my hand up, and I start the cut so they can't even see this part. As my hand turns down, this pack comes forward. Again, I'm using my pointer finger to kind of pivot it up. And then this is already fully covered right now, completely 100%. So I could just take my time at this point because the pass is done. And now all I have to do is just get them squared up and then use the thumb to, square it all up. So the pass is completely covered. You just got to kind of learn your angles with it. And like I was saying, it's kind of nice to kind of turn your body as you do it. So as you're squaring up, kind of turn your body, and that also gives you a really nice cover as well. So if you can combine all of these different techniques together, you'll have an invisible pass. So you notice that I'm using a different type of grip here a little bit. So let's talk about how we do this one. So it's pretty much all the same steps to get ready. You kind of just close up the spread, you have your break here. Now what's gonna happen is you're pushing up immediately. Okay, so instead of squaring up the front first and then pushing up and getting the break, you're actually gonna get the break immediately. So what that would look like is something like this. All right, so you can actually close up with your fingers overhanging the edge, but you just make sure that you close it up in front like this. So they won't be able to see that break there, because we're gonna do the pass as soon as we begin squaring up the front. So they won't see this break. They won't have a chance to, because we're already gonna pretty much have the pass done. So one more time, we can either close up like this. Notice that I am catching a break immediately, but they won't see it because of the front edge. I do really want to stress that it's very important to note where your fingers are going every step here before it becomes automatic. So always remember to move your fingers here. You actually can catch the break immediately by having your fingers up over the edge like this. So what you need to do for this to make sure they can't see the break is make sure that when you close the spread, that it is in front of the bottom packet's front edge. So it's going to be more like that. I'm exaggerating it right now. All right, so we already have a break basically. So what we're going to do is, as we square the front, just as before, we're going to push up and get our fingers into the grip that we need as we're squaring up the front. All right, so it's pretty much as soon as it gets squared at the front, we're going to go into the pass. Remember where your fingers need to be when you are beginning the pass. They're going to be like this. We're going to close up in front. Notice how my thumb comes over and grabs them. So I'm in this kind of position where I can just easily kind of get a bigger break if I want to, right? Keeping in mind, we don't want them to see the break. So just make sure that the top packet is over extending the bottom packet. So we're going to push up like as before. They won't be able to see this break because we already have our fingers covering. And now we're immediately going to get our fingers into that break while we're still messy, what we'll do is actually tilt up the pack just slightly, and you do this while you square the front. You tilt up the pack because that's one way that you can kind of square up the cards. So, you know, people sometimes will go like that to square up the cards. It's a natural type of thing to do. So, closes up in front, pushes up, and you tilt your hand up like this. You get your finger into the break, and then the pass starts as you tilt your hand forward and down, and then it's just as before, and then you finish up with a thumb square. So it's really similar, but it's kind of a knack. You just need to get used to kind of tilting your hands up. Now, once I'm levered up like this and aimed up, my hand switches positions to here. The pass starts as I tilt my hand downwards and shift the top packet forward as they clear, and it ends by squaring up. You don't even necessarily need to do the thumb square at the end. You can literally just kind of go into it and then just end like that. You don't have to do the thumb square, but you can add it in there if you want a little bit of justification kind of a feel to it, but it's not really necessary. So again, let me just break this all down step by step. They have a card selected. You move your index finger to the side. Now on this pass, you can actually put them on flush too. It doesn't really matter because you're going to get the break when you square up the front anyway. So just keep that in mind. It is actually maybe better to put them on flush at this point too. But as you square up, you get that big break. You can visualize how much you need to tilt the packet by just imagining that this card just points with, like, imagine there's a laser attached to the top of it. So if you can imagine that there's a laser on top of this, you want to aim that laser at their eyes, and that will cover the initial cut. You won't be able to see it now when I do it. So I'll start the cut. They can't see it right now. It's behind cover. The hand shifts forward like this. And remember, we're pushing down with our index and pivoting off of the middle finger. This packet will clear, and then you're done. And you can add in a little square like that if you like. So make sure that you go back and rewatch some of these parts again, and just really watch closely what the fingers are doing and each step. So the pass is really like a sequence of operations. There's so many individual steps that all come together to make the pass. The pass isn't just this one move. That's just a very small part of it, and that's the part that people tend to put the most attention to, which is not correct, because that part is honestly one of the easiest parts of the pass, in my opinion, is the actual pass. So once you understand that part is really not the important part, you can really start focusing on the smaller details, like getting your finger out of the way, catching the break as you square, having your fingers already in the positions they need to be in, and you'll remember to angle. This pack shifts forward, and then you lever it a little bit, and that's it. So once you get this down, you'll really start to understand how important it is for each individual action to be right. If you skip one of these parts, the pass will be much more difficult and won't be as smooth.
Now there's actually another point I wanted to make about this. Remember, I was talking about how you think of your hand kind of as like a claw. So literally, you come over the top of the pack like a claw. So you don't come at it like this. You come at it like this. It might look a little awkward, but it's only just for when you grab it, because it allows you to actually curl your fingers around. And now I'm only touching the bottom packet, see? There's no pressure on the top packet. That's because I'm coming down and I'm picking up in this kind of a claw grip. See this? Hands curl over and they curl around. See how my thumb is not like this? It's out like this. Same for the fingers. They're kind of away from the top packet. So you come down, and that's how you grab the packet at the bottom, like this. So it's not like this. See, a lot of people do it like this. You can do it that way, but if you want to do the pass with the messy deck, this is much better because you don't want to interfere with the top packet at all. So the reason why you want to grab it like the claw is because you can now very quickly and immediately cut the packet without having to square it up or do anything. So kind of grab it like this, and look, it's already free. Nothing's holding it there. So it's just a matter of shifting the hand forward, like we talked about before, and the packets will clear very easily. So claw grip, hand kind of tilts up, you start the cut. Now it's already under and it's already done. Hopefully that makes sense. Kind of come in with the claw grip, hand tilts up just like a little bit towards the eyes. The cut's already almost done here. This is where I'm at. You can't see it. This hand's shifted forward so it covers the bottom packet. See, the packet's like this right now. You can't see it. Then when it's fully under, they come together and square. So that's basically how you do this kind of messy pass. Like that. Give you a little bit more of an exposed angle here. I can't stress this enough, getting the pointer finger on the side, because now we're already ready to do the pass. All we have to do is just grip the bottom packet and we can start the pass, right? So we come in and grip the bottom packet without disturbing the top packet by curling our fingers. Now all we're going to do is push up here with the ring finger so we have a little bit bigger of a break. Get our hands in there and then start the pass by tilting our hands down and moving the packet forward. So again, claw grip, push up. Now I'm using my pinky finger to actually kind of hold the packet up here while I get my hand inside. Does that make sense? So instead of like squeezing the top packet, I'm actually holding it in place with my pinky. You could actually squeeze just for a moment while you get your finger into the break, because you want some pressure to the top packet so it doesn't fall back down. So you can either do that by holding it up with the pinky or by squeezing a little bit there. I like doing it without squeezing because, again, I want to be able to just quickly pass these cards as soon as the front kind of gets squared up a little bit more. It happens like that. So claw grip, I'm getting my hand into the break now. I'm starting the pass. A little bit more from the side. Packet goes on top. I'm grabbing like this claw grip. I'm sliding my pinky way deep in and getting the grip, and then I'm starting the pass. So you don't even really need to get this big readies break for this kind of a sloppy pass or whatever you want to call it, for this kind of messy pass, I guess is what I'm calling it. All you have to do is just kind of slide your pinky all the way in, and that will actually naturally get you a break as you slide it in like that. So it slides in as you aim your hand up like this. Now, all you have to do is just make sure there's no pressure from the top hand. So again, kind of open our fingers like that. Aim our hand down, and then right here I'm sliding forward and using my index to pivot off of my middle finger as this gets tucked underneath. And just remember, just naturally letting this packet fall, and it will naturally curve out like this. It'll naturally pivot out. You'll see, like, as I move my hand forward and pivot it, this packet will just fairly easily clear. So hopefully those points will make sense to you guys. I like that. So I really appreciate you guys watching the video. I hope that you're able to get a lot out of this. Practice a bunch, work on finger independence, try out the pass with different types of grips that I showed. You know, you can do, again, you can do this one, you can do this one, you can do this one, This one, I've even seen people do it like this. I do it like this sometimes as well. So there's a lot of different grips, but the key thing that's important is learning how to release the pressure with the top hand, with your right hand, or your left hand if you're left-handed, but the top hand. That's the key. Just releasing the pressure from the fingers and just guiding this packet down gently. And you'll see a huge improvement in your finesse with the pass. And then if you can incorporate a little bit of that angle stuff that I was talking about, angling the pack up towards eye level. This is like when you want to start the cut, but at the same time your hand tilts down. So what ends up happening here is instead of you seeing this, you'll see this, right? Now at the same time I'm pushing forward and levering up the pack, top packet now, and then this just curls underneath the bottom packet and it squares. Leave a comment, definitely hit the like button and subscribe, hit the bell. So again, I'm Josh, and I really hope that you guys got something out of this video. Definitely will improve your pass if you really pay attention to every detail in every sequence, and then eventually it will just become automatic for you. You won't have to think about each individual step. But when you're learning, it's very important to slow down, remember each individual step, all in their succession. And once you can put them all together, it'll start becoming automatic for you. But it just takes time and practice. But these techniques should make the pass much easier for you. So please remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to be notified of all the new videos. And I hope that I see you guys around.